We should be live in the Facebook group. Hello, hello. Good
Hello.
evening, everyone. Um, Glad you're joining us tonight. We've got, I feel like this is sort of a face off between Team Hostel and Team Airbnb. Representing Team Hostel is Stephanie of
Yay.
Vegas.com. And then we have Roshida of Sheeta's on the Loose, representing for Team Airbnb.
The right team. The right team.
The right team. So, I guess I'll give each of you a chance to kind of sell your choice there. I'll start with you, Roshida.
Oh, okay. So I wasn't expecting this, but hey, everyone. If you are here, welcome. Love solo sisters. Love being in this group. Love to stay in Airbnbs. For me, it's a matter of I like to have a bit of control, and I like being in spaces where I don't have to see other people. So my Airbnb stays are typically I'll rent the whole place. I don't like to share with a landlord. I don't want to share a room. I want a whole unit for myself. I like that there's flexibility in my stay. I like that there's a lot of selection. It gives you, staying in an Airbnb gives you an opportunity to learn about the housing stock and the housing market in a city. So if you're planning on being there longer, you can kind of see what on Airbnb, what the opportunities to rent look like. And it often puts you in very local neighborhoods so that you're interacting with more local people, stores, vendors than you might in hostels.
Okay.
You don't know. She don't know. You wouldn't know.
Because Roshida, have you ever stayed at a hostel?
I have looked at hostels online. I have never stayed at a hostel. Okay. I have walked into hostels too, but I have never stayed. I walked in and looked at it and was like, not the same for me.
Okay, Stephanie, tell us why hostels are so great.
Hostels give you a chance to meet other people who are in town to do the exact same thing that you want to do. And to give you ideas for what you didn't even know you wanted to do. Hostels you can have as much or as little personal space as you want in a hostel. Well, not as much, but you can have more personal space in a hostel than you think. But it's just a way to see a place and enjoy a place and maybe get to enjoy it with other people. Long-term travel gets lonely. It gets lonely, and that can wear on your mental health, right? It can wear on you. A hostel is a quick, like a shortcut to alleviate that problem. And like, seriously, people give you really good ideas for places to go and things to do and food to eat. And, your trip is, I don't care what you're planning, your trip is going to be better with someone else's input.
All I heard were strangers. That's all. You said all that, and we're strangers. But I didn't say serial killers, which is usually where some people go. So I'm not saying that. I am saying I don't know those people though.
It is funny you mentioned serial killers because I stayed in my first hostel. I know, like, where am I going with this? I stayed in my first hostel in, I think, 2006. I was visiting the rainforest in Washington, and there was a rainforest hostel that looked very much like it was probably run by a serial killer. It was just going to be me and my friend, and he sent us this list of like the chores we had to do to stay there. Yeah, I said that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Chores. Yeah. So at a hostel. Tell us more.
I think what it was he was calling it a hostel, but basically he was having people come and like keep up his house or whatever. But I did end up staying at a hostel, a really good one in like prime location in Seattle. So we got a really good question that comes up a whole lot. Aren't hostels full of kids?
Around the world, So to Americans, long-term travel means you're probably under 25, right? You don't get to travel long-term unless you're a kid. The rest of the world travels long-term as adults, right? Germans get months of vacation time every year. So in hostels, there are people who are traveling long-term. These people are all ages. Asians, Europeans, Australians, they get a good amount of, some of them get a good amount of time to travel as adults. So hostels are not, it's not a thing, like they wouldn't even, it doesn't even occur to them that you would think that it's only for young people. They're like, what are you talking about? Yes, there is such a thing as a youth hostel, but we're not talking about just, right, there's a difference between a youth, there's an international organization of like youth hostels. But we're talking about places that take all ages. I've never looked around, never one time looked around in a hostel and been like, I'm the only grown up here. You know, there are adults traveling long term all over the world.
I wonder if it is that term youth hostel that has people associating it with young people. That is not to say that there aren't party hostels that are full of late teens, early 20 somethings who are drinking and partying all day long. But last January, I stayed at a hostel in Dublin, and there were at least 3 people there that were in their 70s or 80s.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of my problem, is that, not my problem, but my concern about hostels. And Team Hostel can school me on this, and everybody else in the comments say they don't stay in hostels either. I am not afraid, but I think that when I show up at a hostel, it's going to be a party hostel. And also, them kids gonna be loud, right? Like, even if there are older people, I think about the fact that, like, I'm shutting it down at like 9 o'clock. I don't want to hear anybody else's noise. I don't want to see anybody at breakfast. But that's my personality type. And so when I hear people talk about hostels, I often hear about the happy hours and this. And so I get what Stephanie's saying about how it's helpful to meet people. But I like meeting people in like a defined set of terms and circumstances where I can like go out and do the meeting and then come home to my own private space. And I know some hostels have private rooms. Can you talk a little bit about that, about what that experience is like?
Yeah, but I do want to say that the party, you can tell a party hostel, right?
Okay.
The first picture in the listing is the party, right?
Okay.
If you're looking for hostels, just skip the one where the very first picture is everybody going, yeah, right?
Yep, and they have their red Solo cups.
Don't stay at that one. Yes, right. If they have a rooftop bar or a lobby bar, it's going to be loud. If they have a lobby coffee shop, probably not going to be quite as loud. You know, you can tell what the vibe is. And then you can see people in the reviews like, it was boring. This hostel was so quiet, right? Because they got tricked somehow into thinking that they were booking. They thought that all hostels were going to be party hostels. You pick what you want. I've stayed in hostels with the lobby bar and the rooftop party and all that. And I've stayed in hostels that were so quiet. I got work done. You know, there are hostels that are made for digital nomads nowadays. So you pick what you want. But I forgot what you told me to talk about, Roshida.
Private rooms. So getting into a hostel and having more of that personal private experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing. They're private. I rarely do that so there's a difference between like a hostel and like the kind of hostel where Adelia was talking about, and it was really just his house, and you know.
Well, that was likely a scam. Okay. I will own that.
I've done private rooms in like grown-up hostels. I've never done a private room in a hostel that was like a touristy. I don't know how to explain the difference. I've done private rooms in Airbnbs that are hostels, but I've not done a private room in like an actual
a traditional hostel.
Yeah.
I typically Because for me, somebody asked, where do I fall in this? It depends. It depends on location. It depends on cost. And I have found that most of the places where I might want to go for the private room, I could get an Airbnb cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
So then I would just do that. Although I stayed at a place in Krakow, which was, I guess it was a hostel, but you had your own room, but outside the rooms in the hallway, there were like 5 bathrooms that anybody on that hall could use. So I don't know if that's a hybrid or what.
Yeah.
Because for me personally, if I was going, I've yet to find a place where I felt the private room rate, but I'm also very cheap. That, let me say that. Cause like, I don't want to pay more than like $15, $20 a night. If we're talking about more than that, I could get an Airbnb. So I then weigh, am I at this hostel with a private room? Does it give me my own bathroom? Because I'm not going to pay for a private room and I still have to share a bathroom with somebody.
Okay. Yeah. My first dorm in college was co-ed. And so I'm a little scarred by men in bathrooms. Not like, scarred, yes. But the idea of even co-ed rooms is one that, and everything that turns me off of hostels. But I know people do it all the time and it works out fine. But what they did in those bathrooms back in the day, it's like, it's more than 20 years later and I'm still like, no.
Men snore and they stink and their shoes stink and their feet stink. I have stayed in co-ed rooms, but I try my hardest not to.
Okay.
I am also super cheap, Adelia. I'm paying $16 a night, right? I'm paying $16 a night. So if push comes to shove, I will stay in a co-ed room, because sometimes you'll find a hostel that's like $16, women's only room, $24. Right.
Yeah. And then I have to weigh, is it worth it? Like, how much time am I going to actually spend in the room? If all I'm going to do is sleep there, I don't really care who else is there. If it's a 4-bunk room.
Yeah.
Kathy has a good question. Like, if you snore, can you still stay at a hostel, or is that going to like go against hostel culture? Will that rule you out?
As a person who would be sharing a room with you, I would say you need some privacy. If you know you snore, like I've had some nights ruined by snoring men in the co-ed room. I've never once been in a woman's only room and been like, oh my gosh, I can't sleep. But a man will ruin your night snoring. So maybe, Kathy, you need the private room.
Yes. I have. You just said a man will ruin your night. Period. Could have ended it right there. Period.
Well, I went to Amsterdam and I booked late, so all I could get for a whole $50 a night was a 20-person bunk. It was all girls though. And then for the most part, it was fine. But the one night, the chick in the bunk across from me, not only did she snore, but she also ground her teeth. And I was married to a snorer for 20 years. And I literally got up to go over there and nudge her to stop her because I lost my earplugs. And I had to stop myself because I was like, you don't know that woman. You don't know how she's going to react. So my response was, I always have to make sure that I have my earplugs.
Okay.
Because if you don't want other people to hear your snoring, but there are other people who, I'm sure she knew she snored.
Yes.
And she didn't care.
No, she just went to sleep.
She's taking advantage of the room, right? Yeah.
There are people like there have been men. I'm like, it sounds like there is a bear in this room. There's no mystery. He did not go to sleep wondering if he was a snorer, right? He knew. They don't care. So if you still want to stay in the dorm room, stay in the dorm room. But if you would feel more comfortable in a private room, stay in a private room. Like we said, there are these Airbnb hostel kind of mix things that I like. I like them. I don't even care about sharing a bathroom if the price is right.
For me, it depends on the layout of the bathroom, and it also depends on how old the hostel is. I I get weird about that. But the picture that I posted in the group today,
Uh-huh.
that was at an Airbnb/hostel thing. It was the most adorable place. Everybody had their own room, but there was, again, a bank of bathrooms. So you had to kind of coordinate when you were going to go. Okay. Joan has a good question. How do you find a hostel?
All right. I like to look, I just poke around on Hostel World, but I read the reviews on other sites. So I usually read the reviews on hotels.com. So Hostel World people are used to staying in hostels, so they give good hostel reviews. But then if you go over to booking.com, you'll get good reviews from people who aren't necessarily used to it, and they might give you some insight that the hostel people, because if after a while, hostels, you just overlook things. You just feel like, I don't care. So between the two, between a hotel site and Hostel World, I figure out where I want to stay.
I use...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I use booking.com because when people give reviews, they have to rate the bathrooms. You'll notice that is a reoccurring theme with me. I will judge a place by the bathroom because in the room, I can deal with a lot. But if the bathroom is not on point, that's not going to work for me. Sheeta?
Oh, I was just going to ask, I think what platform you actually book on, but it's booking.com.
You can book through Hostel World, I believe. I typically book through Booking. Even like TripAdvisor now lists hostels because, they're all sort of owned by the same people. Unless I can find out that there's some kind of discount to book directly on the hostel's website, I generally book through booking.com.
Hotels.com gives you your, fifth night for free. So that was super helpful during my career break, my gap year. And then you get, with Ebates, you get a certain discount. So Ebates is now Rakuten. So I would book it through, I would look it up on Hostel World, go over to hotels.com. No, go over to Ebates, use the Ebates link to get to hotels.com, right? Now I'm getting every fifth night for free and I'm getting cash back.
That's nice.
For the percentage cash back. But, cash back. When you spend $60 a night, you're not getting big money back. But when you're traveling for 365 days, it did help me keep going, keep traveling.
Okay. This is not just about hostels. We're also talking about Airbnbs. So we know that you book an Airbnb on their website, but Sheeta, what do you look for? How do you know that this is a good Airbnb? This isn't a scam. I'm not going to get murdered in my sleep, that kind of stuff.
It's time for a plug. I have a guide to booking your perfect Airbnb. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop that in the comments right now if I can. And then I'll tell you what I look for. So, oh no, I can't drop that. Hold up.
You can't do it through StreamYard.
No, I'm on Facebook. It was a bit.ly link and they were like, nah, girl.
Yeah, Facebook don't like that. They don't like it.
Facebook did not like that. Okay, so what I look for is I look at the pictures first. So I want to see what it looks like so I can get a better idea. But some of these hosts be lying in their photos. Like in their description, in their photos, it's not good. So what I do is I read like 2 or 3 pages of reviews. You want to read to make sure that the things that you care about are included. So for me, it's usually like, I need Wi-Fi, I want a kitchen. If it doesn't have reviews, I don't book it. I have done that once before, and it was the worst Airbnb I ever stayed at, ever. Sis had bad dairy in the fridge. Like it was one of those things, I think she was a first-time host, and so she was just going away for the weekend and rented her place out. And it was like, don't use anything but the towels on the bed but there are no towels on the bed when I get there. There's no, there's old, like I said, old milk in the fridge. It was just like, oh no, like this was, her used razor was in the shower. With hair, like, yeah. It was one of those things where I was like,
She didn't even
last minute booking.
She didn't even prepare like you prepare for a friend coming over.
No, she did not take her used razor. I got in the shower and I was like, wait a minute now. Like what? But that's been I think my worst experience ever. Everything else has been really good. Like I said, look at the pictures. I got fooled by the pictures in her review because they were great. And I took the chance on no reviews. Yeah. Don't do it. Read the reviews. And then check the dates of the reviews. So if someone says you're in a hot city, right? You're in Cartagena. If someone in January says, what month are we in? We're in February now. So if someone in January said the air conditioning isn't working, trust them that the air conditioning is still not working. Like it might be fixed, but do you want to take that chance if there are other options? So pictures, reviews, description of what's included. Some people like to talk to the host first to communicate. Unless I have specific questions about what is in the description, I don't typically do it because some of these hosts, it's just too much. I don't know if you guys have that experience when you're checking in and they have like 17 things to say. That French girl did that. She went back and forth like 6 times. And I was like, sis, I'm just like, it's like a 3-day rental. Like we've talked more than we ever need to. Mm-hmm. And so getting as much information that is not written can be helpful. So some of these places look really pretty. You can tell in some buildings that they're corporate owned, like they'll have 6 apartments that all look the same in a building. That can be good, that can be bad, depending on the ownership. I like supporting more locals. So if I can find someone who's locally renting out their place, I'd rather do that than do a corporate owner. Although right now I might err on the side of a corporate owner just to make sure there's a consistent cleaning standard. I want my host to be communicative, but not overly communicative. Yeah, and I want my own space. I want to live like locals live when I travel. And so if I can get a cheap Airbnb in a local neighborhood, that's my favorite thing to do. And sometimes I'll get a little fancier. Sometimes I will skip a city completely. If I'm looking for Airbnbs and I've looked for like an hour and I can't find anything I want to stay in, I'll find a new city. Because sometimes like
an hour.
Yeah.
I've spent days poring over Airbnb listings because I want to find it in the location I want. I want it to be the price that I'm willing to pay.
I'm not doing all that. But I can get in there and be like, yes, this works. Yes, this doesn't work. This is the neighborhood. That's not the neighborhood. When I was traveling on my career break, I had a small suitcase and a big suitcase. Like the 6th floor of a Barcelona apartment building was a bad idea, right? Like these are the things you want to look for. Like, what are you going to have to do to get there? What is the up and down? I stayed in one in Cuba. I don't remember what floor it was on, but I remember it was 1,000 degrees. And so I was with my cousin and it was like, okay, we're going to go out. We're just going to walk. Like it wasn't far, but it was like so hot going up and down those stairs and so tiring that we would go out and be like, okay, we can't go back home yet. Like we would like go out for
rest up.
Yes, we have to be like, okay, it's time to stop and eat. Because once we go back, it's a wrap. I like to make sure that the neighborhood looks like, because you can get an idea of what the neighborhood is on the map, even though they don't tell you the specific address. Sometimes you can figure it out because they'll put an address in either like caption a picture with an address or something. But I want to know that there are restaurants around, or there's, now you can get delivery service almost anywhere, but I like knowing that when there are local restaurants open, I can walk a block or two. There's a grocery store close by. There's a bodega, someplace where I can stop. Especially my first day coming into a place, I want to know that I can walk less than 2 blocks and get bananas and water and those kind of things that your host might have for you, but they probably don't. And so I think it's also important to leave that information in your reviews after you leave so that the next people can have an idea of what the experience was like, good, bad, or indifferent. So I'm really cautious about neighborhoods. I don't think I've ever stayed in an Airbnb where I was like, oh, I don't like this neighborhood. I have stayed in an Airbnb where I was moving from one to another, to Mexico City. And my host was like, oh, that's an interesting neighborhood. And there was nothing wrong with the neighborhood. She was, I think, just a snob. But I mean, if I can walk, a couple blocks and get local foods, tortillas, those kind of things, like that's where I want to be.
One of the things that I do is I will click on the host to see their profile and to see if they have other properties. Because one of the things I noticed is that you may be looking at a property. It may be new and not have any reviews, but sometimes it shows up like, oh, they've got so many reviews. Yeah, but those are on another property.
I don't trust those either.
No.
I don't rely on those.
No. And because I want to support locals, I will definitely click that if it looks like it's kind of a corporate listing to see. And that's an easy way to tell. The other thing that I do in trying to figure out where it is, if in the description somebody says like, oh, there's a Soriana on the corner, blah, blah, blah. So I'm on Google Maps, I'm triangulating like, okay, there's this street, the dot covers this area. So it's probably in this building. And then, do, what is it? Where you zoom in and Google Street View. Do Google Street View to see, okay, what's up with this neighborhood and that sort of thing. I pay attention to the names of the neighborhoods because like here in Mexico City, all of the tourists want to stay in Roma and Condesa, and you will have them say, oh, it's Roma. When you look on the map, it's really Doctores. Where if you're not careful, you can get cut.
There is a difference between Roma and Doctores. Doctores was the first place in Mexico City where I was walking and I was following the map and I looked up and I was like, oh shit, we gotta go. Like, and I didn't think anyone was going to mess with me, but I realized phone in my hands, looking
Not
like
a good idea.
Was you gotta get on the good foot, pick a street and just get where you're going. But and that's really easy to happen to you in certain cities. So you want to make sure that if you're specific about neighborhood and where you stay and where you don't want to stay, that you do not trust, not that you don't trust, but you do some checking, like Adelia said, of the neighborhood, because they will say things, and usually, hopefully, there's a review that will give you more accurate information. Because some of them will be like, it's close to the highway, it's loud all night. There's this. If it's an Airbnb in Mexico City, it is loud all night. They will tell you all of these things that aren't going to be in the description that are helpful. So if I hear more than two people say it's loud, you can't sleep at night, I'm like, next. And that's one of the reasons I go to reviews first. I limit it to the things that are important for me, Wi-Fi, kitchen, and then I'll scroll through the pictures real quick, and then I get to the reviews. Anything else, after I read the reviews, if there's nothing that says, and I'm reading like 30 reviews, I'm reading the first 3 pages at least. And then if I don't see any red flags in the reviews, I'll go back and I'll read the whole description to see if there's anything I need to know.
Steph, anything you want to add?
I don't mind. So I like full kitchen too. I don't mind no oven. I'm in a place right now with no oven, and I probably will be here until they kick me out of the country when my tourist visa ends in May. So the kitchen thing, I'm funny about I guess I'm not funny about the kitchen. I'm not, we must have a microwave. We must have some kind of stovetop, but I don't care about an oven. Today I did really, really want some chocolate chip cookies though. And I don't have an oven or a toaster oven. But what is a full kitchen is different country to country. So in Mexico, an oven, you don't need an oven for it to be a kitchen, for it to be a full kitchen. I don't care because I ain't cooking. But so that's the thing that can pop up for some people, that may or may not be a big deal. For me, no big deal. As long as there's a stove, I don't care about the oven.
And speaking of kitchens, I like to make sure that the kitchen, I like an Airbnb that has some things in stock, like some oils that aren't from 1992, salt, pepper, some paper towels. If I go to your Airbnb and you don't have Nan paper towel, your review's not going to be that great. Like I gotta bring. Like I stayed in one in Guadalajara, that didn't have any hand towels, any like cloth towels or paper towels, and I'm like, what do you do in the kitchen? I got to go to the I found out later on that I think it was a corporate one, but it was that kind of lack of attention to the customer experience that I think is not. I imagine complain about them not having paper towels in the review, but because there were other very valid things. But some people just put up 4 walls and some art on the wall and call it a day. Try to look into reviews for something that seems a little bit more homely, especially if you're going to be there for a week or two. You want more than just these sheets are probably clean and, bathroom's clean enough. Like you want it to feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of hostels have a great kitchen that you can use. Some of them are a terrible kitchen that you can use. Some of them are no kitchen that you can use. That varies from place to place too. I think Australia, was it Australia? Lots of hostels didn't have a kitchen, which seems counter. Like that's the whole point of the hostel, is that you're staying here cheap and you buy your own food. And yeah, that's another thing that makes them super convenient. You can buy your own stuff and keep it in their fridge and cook it right there if you're okay with, hanging out with other people for a while you make your meals.
What's a hostel kitchen like? These things are clean. No one's touching your food.
I have stayed in different kind. Like the one in Seattle won me over because they had brownies at breakfast. Yeah, I was like, this is great.
I would have to leave.
Because breakfast was included. This is the Green Tortoise Hostel right across from Pike's Place Market.
Okay.
Although I was in a room it was like 6 or 7 beds. When you went to the bathroom, you went in, you had your own shower, toilet, and sink in the bathroom when you went. Because I've stayed at some where it's like, okay, the sinks are over here. There's a room for the toilet. Like it's all different. And that kitchen, I don't know that we were allowed in it, but I've stayed in other ones that were literally like commercial kitchens. Mm-hmm. And then some that were like the kitchen at somebody's house. They have different systems on like how to label your food, or some, if they're really fancy, will give you sort of a locker, a cabinet that's just for your stuff.
Okay. Yeah. I'll fight over food. So I need to make sure nobody touches my food when I bring it into the kitchen.
It's a toss up. I've had, like, especially if it's like a pizza, your pizza, somebody's eating that pizza. I don't care what you do. Somebody's eating that pizza. Anything else, most people aren't going to touch it because they don't know what it is. And they don't know what you did to it. But if you bring home some leftover pizza, they're going to eat that pizza. It's gone.
Actually, this time last year in Prague, I stayed in a hostel that turned out to be a converted apartment. Like you go upstairs, like there wasn't even a sign on the outside, which in retrospect probably sounds shady, but it wasn't. And so you ring the bell and they buzz you up and you go, and it's basically like so it had a living room. Mm-hmm. Where we had big screen TV and Netflix and all of that. There was a laundry room, and the kitchen was your typical kitchen, fully stocked with shelving space and refrigerators and all of that. So I've kind of stayed at a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is a good question. Is there a limit to the amount of time that you can stay in a hostel?
Some of them have listed how long you can stay. What's the max?
I used to think that this was not a thing, but because last January, I traveled to 10 different cities, something like 8 or 9 countries, and primarily stayed in hostels the whole time. And in Kiev, Ukraine, okay, this hostel was shady. And I found it on Booking. It had great reviews, but in looking at the pictures, I'm one of those people, because I had a bad experience at an Airbnb here in Mexico City, where I need to understand the floor plan. So like, because the Airbnb I stayed in, the bathroom was not connected to the room. I had to go outside in the rain to go to the door to get to the bathroom. So that has taught me to pay attention to how it was laid out. And I kept looking at this place and it didn't make sense how it was laid out. Literally, I think they converted, I don't even know if it was a 1-bedroom bathroom. It was the equivalent of like almost couch surfing. And so because with booking, you can book and not pay. Once I realized I hadn't paid, I just walked out. I didn't even give an explanation. I walked out. There was another hostel next door. And when I was checking in, there was somebody who was like trying to stay indefinitely. And I heard her say like, no, the most you can stay is 21 days. You have to then check out. Then we can recheck you in. Have you.
Well, that was good. Okay. Yeah, I've seen some listed like 10-day max. Sometimes you see 3-day minimum. If they are like a real poppin' hostel, they'll be like, yeah, you can only stay if you're going to stay for at least 3 days. Yeah.
I think some of that might be related to the innkeeper laws in certain cities. They don't want you having people there like moving in and pretending that it's not like a real rental thing. So they limit the number of days you can stay there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Here's another good question. Can we talk about hostel versus Airbnb experience with respect to loneliness?
You can be lonely in either place if you don't put an effort into talking to people. You can stay in a hostel like those cubby hostels. They're not called cubbies.
I've stayed in one of those.
I do those a lot.
Capsule hotels?
Capsule. Thank you. Yeah, you can stay in a capsule hostel with a door, like they have like not a door, but usually like just like a curtain. You can stay in one of those and not see people, right? And you're in a dorm room. You're all in the same. You can still be lonely in a hostel. It's up to you putting in some effort to talk to people, right? But it's much easier when you're ready to not be by yourself. It's much easier at a hostel to just turn to your neighbor. You don't even have to, like, no matter how introverted you are, you don't have to do anything. There are extroverts wherever you go. And somebody is going to try to talk to you. You decide.
That's the problem.
Yeah, no, the extroverts, they can't help themselves. All you have to do is sort of put yourself physically in a space where the extroverts are, and somebody will talk to you.
They talk to you. And you decide if you want to go or if you don't want to go hang out with them.
For my energy level and sometimes having more people around makes me more lonely because like I need time alone so that I can recharge. And so the idea of people just like talking to me on the way to the bathroom is like, ooh, in the kitchen?
I don't want anyone to talk to me ever. So I am the person who stays at a hostel and makes virtually no connections unless it is this super persistent extrovert. This is one of the reasons why I specifically look for hostels that have curtains on the beds, because I don't want to look at you. I don't want you looking at me. I stayed at basically a capsule hostel in Seoul, South Korea. I can't tell you what the other 3 girls in the room look like because I never saw them. I got in my bed and I closed my curtain. I may have passed one of them on the way to the bathroom and that was it.
Yeah, it's surprising how much you can get used to the fact that there are other people right in your space, but you really don't have to see them. Like those curtains work wonders, So even though like I move around later in the day than most people in hostels are up and out before 8, right? So if breakfast, it lasts until 9:30, I am sitting down for breakfast at 9:25, and so everybody's usually gone. I get to use the bathroom after she cleans the bathroom probably at 9. I get to use the shower at 9:30 and everybody's gone. And so surprisingly, you can have a like more solitary time in a hostel than you think.
So a hostel can go either way. If you're like me and you don't like people, you don't have to talk to anybody. If you find yourself getting lonely, you just have to put yourself in the physical presence of an extrovert, and they will take care of the rest.
Let them take over.
Now, if you're staying in an Airbnb, one of the things you can do is not get an entire place. I have stayed in several where I got a bedroom. And as long as that bedroom comes with a bathroom and the price is right, like $12, I'm on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can interact with the host as much or as little as you want. I've only had one. I don't think she knew what to do with an introvert, because I think her feelings were hurt because I didn't want to hang out with her.
Can I say real quick, because you mentioned this earlier, Adelia, when you're looking at the layout, when you're booking an Airbnb, count the bedrooms, count the beds. The pictures should have everything. I'm not saying they lying. I'm saying some people will have, like, I have seen 5 beds in one room before. Like, this math, how does it, so when they say it sleeps, if there's 3 beds, make sure, if you need 3 beds, make sure one of those is in a pull-out sofa. Like, look and check, count the photos. If there is an actual bedroom, they should have a photo of it. If there is an actual bed, they should have a photo of it. The math must math, or it's not worth the risk. It is, if it says it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and you can't find the 2 bedrooms or the 2 baths in the photos or in the, it's not worth the risk, because you're going to go there and be upset.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Also, if in the reviews it says, I booked one place and the owner switched me to a different place.
Ooh, that's a no-no.
Don't book it. If any review says that, and there's not like a really good explanation that, like, the person who was staying there wasn't like, but it made sense because XYZ. If they're just mad about being switched, it's gonna happen to you, and you're gonna be mad too. Don't do that.
And that's also a scam that can happen as well. Jannell had a good question about, like, if you're staying in a hostel, how are you keeping your belongings safe?
They have safes. A lot of them, you have to look. This is one that you can't assume, because there are plenty that don't have safes, lockers. I'm calling them safes, lockers. But most of them have lockers. Most of the time, the locker is like the full length of the bed. And it's just, if it's a bunk bed, if you're staying in a room with a bunk bed, the whole bottom is 2 lockers. You get half and your neighbor gets half. You bring your own lock and boom.
Some will rent you a lock, but again, that's extra cost you don't need to pay, especially if you're traveling for a while. I'm trying to think. I think I only stayed at one that did not have a secure place. Some have their own set of lockers. I've had like combination or what have you, but I think I've only stayed at one that didn't have a secure thing. And I put that in the review. Like, come on, if you're going to be a hostel, this is like Hostel 101.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes they have a little locker. Sometimes they don't have a locker that will fit your suitcase. It's just a little locker where you can put your laptop and stuff in. So you do need to, this is another thing, like Roshida said, you want to see the photo of it. You don't want to assume that it's going to be like every other one.
Adelia, in that experience, how did you feel comfortable leaving your things in that place?
I didn't. This is one of the reasons why when I shop for laptops, I buy a very lightweight one, because I need to be able to carry it in my bag with me if necessary. Okay. So if I'm really desperate, I might like try and hide it somewhere in the room. I will say a lot of people don't lock their stuff up. Those people tend not to be the same color as us, but they will just leave their stuff out. And I'm like, well, that's great, but I will be locking my things up.
I've left mine just under my pillow many, many times. Seriously.
Yeah, like I'll put it under the mattress if it's something that I can't take with me. And so far, I've not had anything. I did lose a dress. I don't know if somebody took it or if I just got sloppy when I packed, but that really broke my heart because it was like my favorite travel dress. It was a black knit dress that could kind of go up, dress it down. They don't sell them anymore. So that was tough.
Okay.
But as far as keeping your suitcase, like if you're in a place without a big locker or a big place, like your suitcase is just there. Everyone else's stuff is out too. You have, you can either trust that these people are travelers and they don't want your they don't want your shoes, or you just find another place. I have spent many a night in a hostel with nothing locked up and left, and it depends on how you're feeling. But like in my entire 2 months in South Africa, I never had a lock. A girl in my hostel on the first night gave me her lock. She was leaving, or maybe my second night, she was leaving. I was coming. She's like, I don't need this anymore. And then I lost it. So my entire time in South Africa, I never locked my stuff up. I stayed at hostels, I stayed at Airbnbs and whatever. Like for the most part, once you're in a hostel, you're in a place, it's like an airport, where you have all this valuable stuff there, but nobody's really there to steal your stuff. There might be some criminals of opportunity, but not criminals who are planning, right? They're not coming to an airport, going past security just so they can steal your laptop that's sitting there, Hostels are kind of like that too. Once you get in the hostel, you're in a place where ain't nobody worried about your stuff. Not to say don't lock it up, but to say that, you're with a bunch of people who are all in the same situation. Everybody there has a laptop. Everybody there has an iPhone. Everybody there has a passport. They're not worried about yours.
This question is asking specifically about hostels, but I would also be curious about Airbnbs as well. Have you found one city that has mostly bad hostels, or have you been able to find decent ones in most places?
I've never had an experience where I'm like, I can't find a place here. It depends on the price, right? So like Australia, because Australia is just a really expensive place. So it was a struggle to find places within my budget there. But not that they were bad hostels. They were just expensive. Paris, like they're $50 a night for a dorm bed. Like why? But but it's easy to find. There are plenty of hostels. It's just the price. I've stayed in hostels on remote islands in the Philippines. I stayed in a hostel in an island called Comodes that I only went to because someone else who I met said, go to this island, and there was a hostel there, a good, clean, decent hostel with food and stuff. So I haven't had an experience where I'm like, oh, I can't find a place here.
I don't think I've stayed, or maybe I've blocked it out of my mind. I'm trying to think. I know the hostel I stayed in I want to say it's Rotorua, but that might not be the name, in New Zealand. It had a indoor rock wall, so it smelled like feet. Mm-hmm. And I was not impressed because I didn't do my homework like I should have. So there were no curtains on the beds. And I think the locker situation wasn't up to par, but other than that place in Kiev that I just walked out of. But then again, I walked out of it, and right next door was a really nice hostel, had a great restaurant in it. They were very, very helpful to me. So I don't know of a place that has bad ones. What about Airbnbs? Is there a location where you were just like, the selection of Airbnbs suck here?
I have seen cities like that, but it's mostly, I think in every city you can find a little bougie neighborhood if you want to pay the price, right? So usually I'm looking at my budget and everything looks like a dark cave with like furniture from the 80s that looks really uncomfortable, and I don't want to be there. I could pay more, but I'm not trying to pay all that. And so that's the kind of thing where I might be like, okay, I had 3 cities on my list. Maybe I'll try another city that has housing that's more affordable and looks like it'll be more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Should I expect my hostel mate to bring strange men or women back to the bunk area?
No, if people have sex in the room, it's 2 people who are already staying in the room.
Oh, okay. So people aren't bringing strangers back?
They're stranger.
Well, because a lot of hostels have security. Like you are given a code to punch in to enter and leave the door, or you have a key card. So I'm trying to remember. Some have very strict guest policies. So yeah, usually if they're having sex with somebody, it's somebody they came with. Mm-hmm. And they may have 2 beds in that room already.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember looking at a hotel on booking.com, and it listed as a hotel. I was trying to help my cousin book something, and it wasn't until you got through the entire, like it never said hostel anywhere in there, but they were renting like a bunk room with like 20 beds. You know what I mean? Like you had to read the whole description to see that this was not, I was like, this is a great price for Key West. And then going through the whole thing, I was like, oh, y'all not gonna mention that this is, that it says I can rent like for 2 people, but you're not mentioning this is in a room of 20 people. So I think that's also important to look at, to make sure you don't accidentally end up in a hostel if that's not what you're looking for, to read the description of what the room looks like when you're on any of these sites that have multiple types of offerings. Because I definitely did not check the hostel box. And I was looking at this like, look at these photos don't make, what? Oh, okay. You left that part out.
Right. They are now listing hostels on Airbnb. I did not know that until I was looking for some places in Europe, because the price, because again, for me, it all comes down to price and location and quality of the bathroom. And so as I'm searching Airbnb for this city, I'm seeing similar pictures. And then I realized like, oh yeah, this hostel is listing what they have available on Airbnb. So when you're searching on Airbnb, make sure that you are careful and that you are getting the kind of accommodation that you're really looking for. And you don't
count the rooms, count the bathrooms, count the beds. Make sure if it says you get a private room or a whole space to yourself, check those boxes that are important to you, because if not, you will accidentally end up in a situation you don't want to be in.
Mm-hmm. I saw that in San Francisco for the first time, that they were listing hostels on air. That's the first time I saw it, that, and they weren't described as hostels or whatever they call them, shared rooms. Yeah, no. That's the first place I've seen it. Because like with Key West, I was like, oh, these prices are great. And I was like, oh, it's just a bed. You're not getting a room. You're just getting a bed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If there are any more questions in the group, go ahead and drop those in, because we are about 10 minutes away from wrapping up. Have you stayed at a particularly unique or cool hostel or Airbnb?
I stayed at a couple of really cool Bali hostels with pools, and with one was a capsule and one was not. But that just have a pool, and they do stuff like you can go, if you want to go to Monkey Forest with us, we're leaving at 11 a.m. or, I like the fact that you can do stuff with them or not. Most of the time I don't do stuff with them, but sometimes you want to. In South Africa, I stayed in a hostel in Johannesburg that had a wine night. It was BYOB, but it was like a wine night. And we just sat around with strangers sharing your wine, which I would never do. But it just made that my time in Johannesburg more special. Even the loners, you're not going to convince me that your favorite cities aren't the cities where you made a connection with someone, made connections with people. And so it does change that experience when you can stay in a hostel that fosters some kind of community, no matter how temporary it is. And they're really good at it. That's what they're there for. They're there to welcome you into that city and show you around and help you meet other travelers. They're great at it. It's not like, a hotel where they're like, here's a list of places you might like. Here's a restaurant you might like to go to.
Now, every time Stephanie and I talk about hostels, because we end up talking about this topic a lot, I say, okay, I'm going to try it next time. And then I never actually.
No, you're not.
No, she's not.
I say it, but there's a part of me that wants to, because I want to see the experience. And there's a part of me that is like, people before breakfast? Ooh, ugh. And so I think for people who are also like me, who are on the fence, drop any questions you have about what would be the turning point for you. If you could say hostels versus no hostels, what would make you want to stay in a hostel? I am a warm person. I don't want to hear people in my room at night. I don't like sleeping next to a human. The idea that there's someone else sharing my space at night it throws me off. And so
I can't do that. I can't like rent an apartment with a strange person because I think that very thought, like, I don't want that person in my space. I don't want to sit in the living room and they're there. But yeah, apparently I have no problem going to sleep with 20 other people in the room.
All right. One of these days, I don't know where, and it's going to be post-COVID definitely, but I will try it.
Stayed at an Airbnb in DC, very close to Pentagon City. But she did not mention she had a stripper pole in the living room. So that was interesting.
Okay.
Hostels, I have learned, have I stayed at a really cool hostel? The Quisby in New Orleans, I like. They have a cute little bar. It's right in the Garden District. You're right on the, what is the thing? The streetcar line. So that one was nice. I'm trying to think any other hostel where I was just like, this is great. There have been a couple of times where I've stayed in Romania. I was the only person at the hostel.
Yeah, I've had that too. Those are really fun.
That was nice. That was very nice. But then I have had my fair share of hostel and Airbnb disasters, like the Airbnb I booked for a month, not realizing there was no door connecting the bathroom to the room, and it was rainy season. So that was no fun, getting up and going to the bathroom in the rain and having to go outside. I was going to suggest this hostel to you, Sheeta, Hostel in Amsterdam. I did not know it was Black owned. I did know it was women only, because I considered staying there. It just wasn't in the location that I wanted to stay in. So that might be, especially for anybody else who is concerned about like, I don't want to stay with stinky men. There are female only hostels.
Yeah. And in Japan, there are lots of male only hostels. I found it hard to find a cheap room last minute for Tokyo, for a long layover in Tokyo. They don't seem to do that. Lots of men only hostels.
Okay.
Is there anybody who has another question or wants to share like what's got them on the fence, like Roshida asked about whether they should stay in a hostel or an Airbnb? Now's the time to ask.
Yeah. Let's see if we have any other questions. Kathy says, what's maintenance in long-term Airbnbs like? Are landlords slow to move?
I've never had a maintenance issue in a long-term Airbnb. And I didn't mention cool Airbnbs because I can't remember any that are really cool. What I like most is being able to stay in one for 2 months, for a month, you know what I mean? And having the ability to make it home, bring a little succulent in and have that be my little baby succulent for the time that I'm there. And so for me, there aren't any that have been like really cool, but I also haven't needed, I think for most Airbnbs, it's kind of like either this works or it doesn't. I stayed in one in Mexico City a little while ago, and it was like, the TV didn't work. Okay. Like, and I hit them up and I was like, the TV, they had all of these, like, that you're getting this and this and this. And I was like, okay, these 3 things you said are here, are not here. I told them so that we could note, it was in the notes in the very beginning in case we had beef later on. I think it was like there was one remote, but it didn't turn on the cable and the TV. And so I don't know if there was a missing remote, but I was like, hey, this doesn't work. So that when I leave, I do this on day 1, so that when I leave, you're not billing me for a missing remote that was never there. But do I care that I can't watch the TV? If I did, I would complain and they would probably do something because they don't want to get a bad review. But typically I haven't needed any maintenance in a long term. It's kind of like I get there, it's all right, I like it, or I don't. And if I don't, I haven't had a long-term one that I didn't like. I've had short-term ones that I didn't like, but I spend a lot more time looking at the long-term ones. And so I'm much more invested in, and I'm much more knowledgeable about what it's going to look like. So no, I haven't needed, I think, anything maintenance-wise in a long-term one.
my mom and I had to have the guy come to do something in Guadalajara. It was no big deal. He had to come twice. He came and he did something and he left, and then he had to come back. No big deal.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it doesn't seem that we have any more questions, ladies.
We nailed it.
Awesome.
Team Airbnb.
Thank you both for sharing your knowledge and entertaining stories. Again, we've got Stephanie from vicarious.com and Roshida from sheetasontheloose.com. All right. Good night, y'all.
Thanks, guys. Bye. Bye.
Okay.